Now we move on to ordinance introductions. The first is 2017-10, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton concerning alarm system registration fees and amending section 2-118 of the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. And I guess I can start by giving a little bit of background on this ordinance. This is something that Council actually passed, I believe, back in 2015, and the fees were set for a 2-year period of $100 each for a fire alarm and a burglar alarm, and that was intended to be a consolidation of the township and borough ordinances at the time. And it was consolidating to match the township fees.
Well, did you see today, we actually did it in 2012 when before we consolidated, we did this. I don't know if you saw that, because that was clear that we did it in 2012.
Oh, okay, we might have done 2012, sorry.
No, I thought that too, but we did the fees, and that they were still separate for the two municipalities.
Maybe I'm gonna pass it over to Trishka.
Yeah, Lisa Maddox went back through her file just to track the chronology. So in 2012, the borough and the township, separately continued a bunch of ordinances, and I think at that point, both the township and the borough established an annual fee of $50 per year for burglar alarms and for fire alarms. Then when the ordinances were consolidated, following consolidation, I think the fee stayed at $50, but then you went to requiring registration every other year, hence the fee would only be paid every other year, which is why it was set forth in the code as $100 instead of $50. But it's been $50 per year since 2012, but just payable every other year, hence $100.
And I think part of the issue is that that was set in the ordinance, but I don't think that is what was being charged when people came in.
Well,
from our discussion, so Jenny and I went and spoke this afternoon to Erica down in the police department, who was at the former township also, and it sounds like they had been charging in the former township $25 a year for all alarms inclusive. So it didn't matter how many alarms you have, they were charging $25 per year. And so even though that might have not been in accordance with the ordinance, so when people came in, it was a big change from what they were expecting. So I think it was true, that's what the ordinance said, but I don't know if the chief wants to pipe it, but it seems like what was being charged in practice was significantly less. As the chief, yeah, chief's here.
Well, were we even doing it? Charging the people?
So the mayor's background is correct. So what I've learned is in the township, they were charging a $25 flat fee. Upon consolidation, we had discussions about the harmonization of the ordinance. The borough police department was never involved at all in ordinances. We never enforced ordinances, collected any registration fees. That was all new on the borough side. We in 2015, Mayor and Council passed the consolidated ordinance in August, and in January of 2016, there was a discussion in Council with a member of the public regarding a discontent with the way that the ordinance read and the plans to on the registration fees, and it was our understanding at that time that the fees were going to be reconsidered, and that's where we currently stand.
Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, the $100 is for the 1 year?
No.
It's for 2 years. So it's $50.
Well,
but you pay
for
for 2
both
years.
fire and
No,
For
it's 200 for both.
It is 100 if you have
Yeah,
both
that- yeah,
burglar
that-
and
Yeah,
fire.
that's what I'm saying. It's 100 if you have fire and alarm. It's 100 per year.
Each one is still, it's $50 a year, but it's 100 for 2 years. So we just changed, when we passed the ordinance the last time, not the 2012, but in 14 or
14.
15 or whenever it was, we made it 100 for 2 years, and it was 200 for both fire and burglar. So each one was, there was no discount for having two.
I think part of the issue too is that we are, I think it was well-intentioned and we were just sort of going down this road where it seemed like we were just keeping what was there, but we've managed to get pretty far outside of what other people are charging. So I just looked up Montgomery, there's $15 for 2 years. And so for registration of a fire alarm. So I think we just,
I agree with you.
I think we want to be careful about just doing what is sort of within reason of surrounding communities.
Well, so what would, so like Lawrenceville and Montgomery and South Brunswick, all of them charge under $50?
Yeah, so the chief sent out
That's right.
from something from his survey, and
That's right.
these say annual registration fees. The Montgomery one's actually for 2 years, so these are either for 1 or 2 years. West Windsor's 25, South Brunswick's 25, Montgomery's 15 for the 2 years, Lawrence is 30, and Hopewell's 20. So they're all, I think, the 20. We'd be safe, I think, at 25. That seems more in line with the other communities, and that might be what I would recommend.
Why can't we charge 25?
Well,
That's what
have
we're
to
here,
change
that's what we're
the
talking
ordinance.
about
That will-
doing.
Oh,
That's why we're introducing this, because we can either keep it the same and then we don't introduce this, or we reduce the fee, which I've come to believe we should do, even though before I was against it. But when I saw how low the other towns are, and also talked to the person who enforced it, and she said, in our staff, and she said that people were really upset. And I agree that we should not provide, that we want people to register.
Well, Chief, we had this discussion a little bit earlier. If we're only going to charge 15 or 25, is it worth the administrative headache? Why do we need people to register at all?
And since we haven't really been doing it, right? I know we haven't in the borough.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. We didn't, I hate to go here, we didn't do it in the borough, we did it in the township. I
We
think.
didn't do it at all in the borough?
You know, I found a bill that the Kremellers had paid to the borough for $35 for
Let me
alarm.
qualify that. We in the police department, we weren't involved with the registrations, and we did no enforcement.
Oh, that's
of-
funny. So the fee went to the borough, but it never.
Yeah, it may have went through construction, which was out of our purview in the borough, which is probably what occurred. From my historical standpoint, this was new territory, quite frankly. A lot of towns have always done it. There's definitely, it's a resource when we respond to an alarm and it's false.
Well, that's a separate question. Could we still keep the part of the ordinance where we would fine for a false alarm, but not necessarily require people to register proactively?
That's what, I mean, that would just
That-
eliminate
That makes sense
bureaucracy,
to
right?
me. That's, I mean, Chief, I guess that's the question. Is there a law enforcement reason we need people to be registering? Because otherwise, I think, I agree with you, with Councilwoman Butler, that what we really ought to be doing is the fine on the people who are using resources.
If you have a burglar or a fire alarm, you're registered with
The company, but no, I mean, I think the answer is no, but I want to just confirm it.
So what Erica said when we went to talk to her was that she thought there was a couple advantages of having people come in. Number one is more just sort of psychological, like you come in and it helps just make sure that your system is, you're keeping it up to date so that you don't have the false alarms. The other, she thought it was useful, potentially, the chief would know more, that it's useful for the police to know if they're going to trigger an alarm, if they're, I don't know if that's ever an issue.
Yeah, as I sit here and I go through all the thoughts in my, I can't really give you a real strong argument off the top of my head as to the law enforcement, the overwhelming law enforcement purpose. I think there's more, it could be regulated more easily. We know who has alarms. Off the top of my head, I really just don't have a legitimate argument that's overly convincing as I sit here right now. I'm sure if I go back and research it, I would come up with.
Do you want some time to think about it? I mean, we could table this and come back, but
I think we should, because I think we should
we should,
seriously
too.
consider not
just lifting it
not
all
having
together.
it, because
Yeah.
it's a big, just think of all the record keeping and the paper and the stamps and everything.
But I do have another question that, how did it happen that we passed an ordinance and it wasn't being billed?
That ordinance was passed in August of 2015.
To go into effect in 16?
Yes. In 16, in early January, a gentleman came into the police department, then came into council, and he reappeared before council on February 8th. In January, this exact topic came up, and it was my understanding during the conversation with mayor and council was going back to ordinance review for this exact issue. In February, on February 8th, he came back and mentioned it again and thanked you for reviewing it, and that's where it's been.
But we weren't billing the 2012 amount.
No,
You-
no, because the
So-
borough was never, the borough residents, if you remember, we had these conversations.
Right.
Were never,
Right, but in 2012, the borough and the township passed, it was in anticipation of consolidation, so we went over a number of fees, and we passed identical ordinances establishing these.
you harmonized the fees. You didn't harmonize the ordinance and procedures in 2012 that were different in both municipalities. The Township Police Department registered the alarms. The Borough Police Department never did. And we had these discussions repeatedly in public and operationally since
Don't you have that?
consolidation.
Well, so my recommendation would be, let's table this, or I don't even know if we have to table it. I don't think we've introduced it yet. So I would recommend if the chief can just see if, sounds like I know the answer already, given that the borough didn't seem to have a problem with not registering them. Do you want more time to take a look and see if you're concerned about that, or are you okay with council acting tonight?
I was actually going to make a point, and I think really all we need right now is just a direction from council in terms of, is this something that you want to do? That's fine. If it's not,
Well,
I don't know that.
I think that the direction, what I'm hearing, is that people would be interested in passing the ordinance and removing the registration fees, but making sure that we can still charge for false alarm.
And I think that would be okay with the chief on that if that's something the council wanted to do. Rather than bringing it, we've gone through a process before. If that's what I think the
Well, I think
council's
that
consensus
the
is.
concern was, is there a problem with
If we don't
the-
register, if
with
we
the-
don't
with
register.
not registering them?
I don't think there is, chief, is there?
Well, that's what he was,
He's
Not that I can
thinking.
give you, now, I don't have anything that I can give you that is an overwhelming concern for me as I sit here now.
Right, but do you want more time to just make sure, or are you comfortable with us?
I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with you taking action.
That's great. I mean, so have we been charging for false alarms?
No.
Because that, look,
Good
I
mayor.
mean, just a quick, it was like 1,000 total or more false alarms last year. I mean,
But I think the issue is you can't charge for the false alarm if
Oh.
there's the registration requirement?
Yeah, again,
I don't know why.
again.
Mayor, I would say if we wanted to change that, we would have to come back. I was just talking to the attorney in terms of redoing the ordinance, so that's probably the best bet is to, if that's the direction, let's let's go back
Oh,
and
I see,
repass
because you have to
something.
rewrite it because there's so many changes?
Well, this ordinance is amending your fee schedule. If you guys are talking about changing whether you even have to register alarm systems, that's a completely different section of your code. That's a brand-new ordinance. That's not this ordinance. This ordinance just changes how much you're charging to register an alarm.
I
Okay.
think we ought to take a
So
few minutes.
I can't,
Okay,
I
all
can't
right, so
do that on
why
the
don't we
fly.
wait, and we'll bring it back all cleaned up
Yeah.
with, and it sounds like, if I'm hearing everybody, I just want sort of consensus
Well-
at this, yeah, Mr. Miller?
I have a question, and it's probably directed at Deanna, and that is, does our engineering department inspect the installation of alarms?
It would fall under the construction code official, not engineering.
Under construction code? So are they inspected?
Not that I'm not sure, not that I'm aware of. We can check on that and get you an answer.
I'll tell you my concern. My concern is that you can pick up magazines and they advertise, effectively buy the bits and pieces and put them in yourself. And if we're vulnerable to people putting in do-it-yourself burglar alarms, then we're vulnerable to, I think, false alarms, more so than if they were installed by a professional installer. And maybe we ought to think a bit about how we charge for false alarms separately from the registration.
Well, that
I
is
think is
separate.
already in the ordinance, and,
But I agree with you, though. I mean, it's a concern. When you look at how many false alarms we have, that seems like a problem worth confronting by itself. And, definitely we should be exacting the fine for the second alarm like in the ordinance. I'm wondering, are we doing that right now at all? We're not. So right now, nobody's getting any, they don't get charged when there's a false alarm, even if it's the second time?
No, and again, that was a difference between the borough and the township. In the borough, if we went to 1,000 false alarms at one place, there was no charge.
Yeah, well, we definitely want there to be a charge.
But we passed the 2015 ordinance, so I don't understand why we weren't charging for false alarms.
Well, in the borough, because we didn't change the ordinance in the borough, so, oh, I see, it was on the books.
I
but we
think it
didn't-
was because there was confusion, because we held this ordinance because of the gentleman who came in and complained, and it was getting reviewed. That's why it's back on our agenda now, so we can review it and get it finalized.
We didn't hold it, and we passed an ordinance,
No,
and
it was most certainly upheld in council in January of 2016. For the record, it was most certainly done, and that same gentleman came in on February 8th and thanked you for revisiting it. So that absolutely occurred.
Well, anyway, let's just go forward now, and,
Do we need a motion to?
Well,
to-
I-
We need to rewrite it
Okay.
so that,
Okay.
because it is a different ordinance,
All right.
But I do think we should really try to figure out how to charge for false alarms, because look at how many. And I was also curious, I forgot to ask in the police report, there were like 87 or something panic alarms. Were they all false? If they're in the police report, does that mean they're false? And what are panic alarms?
All right, here, I have another question. Can we go, can we pass a motion now to have the false alarm part of this be active until we come back with the new ordinance?
our old ordinance is in effect. And
It's not in effect because council,
I don't think we.
well,
I
you
don't
can
think we
review the tapes.
I don't
'cause
think
it's-
we took an action. We said we would review, I think what that man was concerned about were the registration fees. And I think that we said we would agree to look at them, I guess, but that doesn't mean, I don't know that we took a formal action that rescinded the ordinance.
Well, I
We
think we
received-
paused it, just
staff
like,
received-
how we passed an ordinance on A-frame signs? And
But I
those
thi-
are
I
not,
think
those
we-
are also, that's not being enforced.
But I think we took I think we took an action to suspend that. I don't know.
I
We
think
got a
we
consensus.
instructed,
I think it was
I
the
think we
same.
instructed staff to not enforce it until we came back with them because it was just being
Yeah.
looked at, and I think it's the same thing. But I do feel, I'm hearing from council that we would like to have part of this enforced, which is the false alarm piece, while we're working out whether there's going to be a fee. And I guess I would turn to Trishka if that's something we can do or not. Or if you
We're
just
trying to
need
find
to
out,
wait.
yes.
Okay.
See how you can enforce part of
We've got the direction.
Right,
We'll-
maybe we should just put this on,
Yeah, why don't we just
on
put
a
this- why don't we
priority.
table-
Put it on a priority list and have it come back on
table
March
this?
13th then?
Why don't we just table this?
All right.
Mayor, I did check in with John Pettinati, and he said that they do inspect new home alarm systems, and they do charge them for the inspection. He thinks it's $40.
Okay. All right.
Mark, can I ask you, when you're looking at this again, just do a back-of-the-envelope calculation about whether or not charging that annual fee would sort of cover the administrative cost of it, as, you know, we're desperately seeking ways to balance expenses and revenues. It doesn't feel like charging $15 or some nominal amount is going to be worth the headache that it causes, but maybe it is.
But my sense from council was that people did not want to charge a fee. So I just want to get clarity from council before we give you direction to
I'm
work on
just,
that.
I'm just asking Mark
know,
to
that's-
do a little bit of calculation to see whether it makes any sense. We're sitting up here saying, but we don't know how many people, we don't know what the revenue might be, do we?
Well, I just want to get I want to get the consensus of council first, because I thought we were somewhere, and then that's a different direction, so.
Well, I would rather not charge a fee. But if the fee is $300,000 or something, that's totally different. But I would rather not charge a fee and then just charge for false alarms. I think that's a lot better. It sends a clearer message to the community, and we're working with them. And I think it's also will give you a more an incentive to maybe get an alarm.
Right, I don't disagree. I just
Yeah.
think that we
So-
shouldn't,
I think that's
if
right.
it's a
And we just-
revenue stream, we shouldn't give it up without.
And we need to understand make sure that we understand that you can do that without requiring registration. So it seems like a little bit of fact-finding needs to happen, administratively in consultation with the lawyer, and I think that ought to be the direction, yeah.
Okay, but the fact finding is whether we can charge the false alarm fee.
Well, I think we know that we can.
Okay,
I
but
don't
I'm
think there's
also
any.
hearing, do you want to eliminate the need to register, or do you want to have people register and not charge them a fee for registering?
Not
Not
register.
register.
Not register at all.
Okay. Okay. All right, so next ordinance